I was thinking about Starfield the other day because I'm getting ready to do my second playthrough, and I kind of thought about Cyberpunk 2077 in the back of my mind, and how the two sort of share a similar path in terms of launch through patches, getting progressively better and better over time, fixing all the bugs, adding all these quality of life features, making the game what it probably should have been at launch. I think when we look at Cyberpunk 2077, it's pretty easy to go back to the launch version of that and say it was a horrific hot mess, and then flash forward to the 2.0 update that they did ahead of the Phantom Liberty launch, and suddenly all was forgiven. CD Projekt Red was again in the good graces of gamers everywhere, and Cyberpunk 2077 has gone on to become this much beloved game that has sold, I don't know how many, 25, 30 million copies. I don't keep track anymore because I've already done 2 playthroughs, so it's kind of in the background now, and I'm just waiting for the second one now, or the sequel. Anyway, Starfield. Let's talk more Starfield, because they've been patching, making it better and better and better. They've got a DLC coming in the pipeline this fall, and they're doing things to the game that are the result of people's discussions. Like ground vehicles getting added to the game. Those are still being worked on, but they are coming down the pipeline. But the big one I want to look at is the May 15th patch, because we've seen some pretty significant updates since Starfield's launch. But I think the May 15th one is the one that is sort of pushing it over the peak and having people sit up and go, oh, you're adding, the performance options in terms of now I can choose frame rates, at least on the Xbox, on the Series X. I can now choose whether I want to do 30 frames or uncapped or 60, whatever. And you've done all these new features with the map, and you're adding all this, that, and the other, and you've fixed all this stuff, and you've polished this over here. And I've seen the internet's opinion of Starfield go from being one of, oh, it's just another Bethesda game, to, oh, this is actually a really, really good game. And I played it at launch and had a great time. And I was never one of those people who was bad-mouthing Starfield out of the gate. I did have my criticisms about some of the jank, but that's Bethesda jank, and it is what it is. But I didn't have any game-breaking bugs. I played it on the Xbox. It had a lot of fun. Finished it, said, you know what, I'm ready to do another playthrough whenever the DLC is coming in the pipeline. But then they dropped the news about the May 15th update a few weeks back, and I went, you know what? This actually is a big enough of an update that's added enough quality of life features that I feel like it has now turned Starfield into a completely different game. I'm willing to give it another playthrough. And I know some people are going to wait until the ground vehicles get added, and that's totally cool. I don't plan on doing a ton of planet exploration, so for me, the addition of land vehicles is not going to be that big of a deal for me, because I don't go roaming around on planets. I do mostly space exploration and space trucking, and I do the RPG stuff because I love the storylines and stuff, but I don't actively get into like the outpost building and all that other stuff. I know some people go crazy with that, especially when we get into like the mods and things you can do with the game. But what's interesting to me is the trajectory of Starfield from launch to where it is now, because it's been not quite a year, but it has now made so many updates that I've seen most of the people who had negative things to say about the game have now changed their tune, and they've went, oh, actually, yeah, Bethesda did what they've always done. They kept on patching the game, and they made it into something better. And again, I think if these things had been added to the game before it had launched, like for the launch version, I think people would have had a completely different outlook on it. Like if it would have had, scaling frame rates and changeable frame rates, performance options versus fidelity options on the consoles from the get-go, land vehicles from the get-go, the new maps that they're doing with the verticality to them, everything. I think these are all things when I look at what Starfield is doing and compare it to Cyberpunk's 2.0 update, I see parallels. And to me, that's a good sign. It means that A, Bethesda is listening, and B, Bethesda is always going to be working on making this bigger, because this is a big new IP for them. And here's the kicker. If you've watched, there's been a lot of people who have talked about this, but I know most recently I saw on Drop Frames, the guys were talking about how, regardless of the vocal minority who were screaming about how I hate Starfield and Bethesda lied and all this other stuff at the beginning, the game sold a boatload of copies and was commercially a very, very successful game. And if I'm not mistaken, it was the most successful game in Bethesda's launch history in terms of launches of games. And it might not have won Game of the Year like, Fallout 4 did. It might not be as big yet in terms of the legacy as like Skyrim. I think that it's on the trajectory to get there. Mostly that's just because I look at the hard work that Bethesda is putting into this, and I recognize that and say, hey, I'm going to give credit where it's due and say, hey, you guys are putting in the hard work, putting in the hours. You're trying to make this as good of a game as it could be and should have been when it launched. And I can do nothing but, salute that. Because for me, like I said, I had fun when it came out, but there were things that I went, could have been better. I see these things being made better. A good example of this is I was very outspoken during my initial playthrough that I don't care about frame rates. Like 30 frames, I don't care. I don't care if it's locked at 30 frames. I mean, Dragon's Dogma 2 locked at 30 frames. So many Red Dead Redemption 2 locked at 30 frames. It just doesn't matter to me. But I also said when I made my final review of Starfield, I was actually critiquing it against Phantom Liberty, which I was playing right after I finished Starfield. And it was like, it was such a dramatic comparison to the 2.0 version of Cyberpunk to what Starfield had to offer. It was like, oof, that hurts. Like, you got to do better, Bethesda. Like, and obviously they still have to work on things. Like, they will never be able to fix the loading screen issues because that's just the way they built this game. But they can do a lot of other things, like the frame things. Because I did say in my final review, when I was comparing the two games, I said the one thing that I don't like about Starfield is when it comes to the frames, they don't bother me except in gunplay. Because when it comes to gunplay, there's not really any aim assist, and I suck at gameplay. I like suck at gunplay when it's 30 frames. Like, I just can't hit anything, which is why when I was playing, if you watched me play Fallout 4 recently, I started playing it before the next gen update that happened, and then the next gen update happened, we got 60 frames a second, and it was like before that I was always using the VAT system because I suck so bad at aiming in 30 frames because it's just impossible to keep up with things. That VATS is the easiest way for me to go because then I don't have to aim. I can just go into the VAT system and just pew pew pew. And then when I looked at Cyberpunk and the Phantom Liberty and 2.0 update, them having a performance option where I could get 60 frames, the gunplay was so amazing in that game. So what I'm really excited about, because I am playing on the Series X, we got, what is today? Today's like the 13th or something, 12th. We have 3 more days until I start my second playthrough. I'm really looking forward to the gunplay this time, which was something that I didn't look forward to the first time around, because once I started doing the gunplay, it was like, oof, that's kind of But this time around, going back to what I was saying earlier about how I really just love the space missions and flying around and doing all that stuff. The idea of, being able to go in and play at 60 frames and be able to actually have smooth gunplay now, I'm thinking that I might actually start going and taking on way more bandit caves and stuff, because the flickering of the lights, guys, here, it's like 116 degrees out where I live, and the power grid is like overloaded, so it's like flickering all day long because everybody's burning their air conditioners up. Anyway, guys, second playthrough of Starfield is starting for me on the 15th as soon as the patch goes live. I am playing on the Xbox Series X. I'm going to be playing a Space Marine this time because I do want to experience that gunplay. I want to do the automatic gunplay. I can't wait. Hopefully you're going to be stoked alongside with me and tuning in for those sessions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts in terms of comparing this to Cyberpunk 2077 and the 2.0 update and all the hard work that Bethesda has been putting in to make this the game that it probably should have been when it launched, but just making it a better game overall and adding those quality of life features that everyone loves. Love to hear your thoughts down below. Don't forget the Patreon and the Discord, and I'll see everybody in the next live stream or video.